Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining me for today's webinar. My name is Amber Hines, and today we're going to be talking about Medicaid planning for a married couple. If you have questions during today's webinar, feel free to type those into the questions bar of the GoToWebinar dashboard. And also, if you're interested in the handouts from today's program, feel free to download those out of the GoToWebinar dashboard as well. Again, my name is Amber Hines, and I have been working with elder law and estate planning attorneys for the last 15 years on Medicaid compliant annuities. I am insurance licensed in all states, and I hold a Series 65 license with FINRA. I created Ashford to assist attorneys and advisors with pre-planning as well as crisis Medicaid planning. Some of the ways that Ashford can help you and your clients include that we provide complementary case analysis. So this means that we will help you to determine the amount of the annuity purchase, the term of the annuity, and which assets should be annuitized. So if we receive a list of your clients' assets and it includes IRAs, existing annuities, we can go through and determine which assets it makes the most sense to annuitize, whether we use a 1035 exchange or a trustee to trustee transfer to look at what makes the most sense for your clients to annuitize from a tax standpoint, and then also what term the annuity should be structured for. We provide assistance from the beginning to the end of a case. This includes providing quotes for the annuity, assistance with the actual funding of the annuity, and then the death claim process that would become necessary. We work with A-rated insurance carriers, and we offer top-notch customer service. So typically we get back to you within the same day with a Medicaid proposal for your clients. If you reach out to us, our turnaround time is normally same day. When we look at the differences between pre-planning and crisis planning, they are two very different ways to plan for clients. Pre-planning or proactive planning includes, or this is going to be a client that is still healthy, they're not in need of any immediate long-term care services, and we don't anticipate them needing long-term care for some time. Pre-planning is always going to be the best option because your clients have the most options to preserve his or her assets for the future, and they also have the most choice in where they would receive care. So if they are planning to stay in their home or go to assisted living, then those are going to be more options that will be available to clients in a pre-planning mode versus crisis planning. Pre-planning is often going to involve transferring the majority of clients' assets into an irrevocable trust and then waiting out the 5-year look-back period. This necessarily isn't going to be the best option for clients if they have a lot of assets that are in IRAs or pre-tax accounts, retirement accounts, 401ks, things of that nature. So if you do have clients that have a lot of assets in IRAs or 401ks and they're looking to pre-plan, we can look at leveraging those assets with hybrid long-term care instead of having to incur the tax consequences and transferring those assets into a trust. If we shift to a crisis planning mode, we're generally going to be looking at Medicaid or veterans benefits in a crisis plan. And this is going to involve a client that is already in need of care services and they're seeking immediate financial relief from the expensive long-term care services that they are already incurring or they are about to incur. The planning strategies when we're in a crisis mode are generally going to involve spending down countable assets in order to qualify for Medicaid or veterans benefits in order for those programs to assist with the long-term care expenses. And so we're trying to convert countable assets for Medicaid or VA purposes into non-countable assets. The different ways to pay for long-term care include private paying or self-insuring. So this is essentially just taking money from a checking, savings, or retirement account, investment accounts, and privately paying for the individual's care. We can also look at long-term care insurance. This can involve either traditional long-term care or hybrid long-term care insurance policies. Traditional long-term care is going to be similar to a client's auto or home insurance, where it's a use it or lose it type of policy, whereas a hybrid policy is going to involve a life insurance or annuity contract with a long-term care rider, so that if that policy is not used for long-term care purposes, there is going to be a residual death benefit that the intended beneficiaries would receive. We can also look at veterans aid and attendance benefits, and this is really for individuals that served for 90 days of active duty. This can be for a veteran or a surviving spouse that would be entitled to a monthly cash benefit from the VA, and this is not necessarily a service-connected benefit. This is going to be a non-service connected monthly pension that the VA would pay for to assist with paying for home health care, assisted living, or skilled nursing. And then finally, we can look at Medicaid as another source in a crisis Medicaid or crisis plan. So today we're going to be talking specifically about crisis planning, and we're going to be covering Medicaid planning for a married couple. When we look at the income and asset limitations for a married couple, first, the income limitations for the Medicaid applicant or the institutionalized individual, we must have total income that is less than the cost of care. This generally is not going to be a hard test to overcome as far as the amount of the cost of care, ranging anywhere from $4,500 a month up to $15,000 a month. And when we look at, most clients just have Social Security, maybe a pension that they're receiving. So meeting this income limitation of having the institutionalized spouse's total income less than the cost of care is usually a pretty easy test to overcome. There are some states that are considered to be income cap states, and if you are in an income cap state and you have a Medicaid applicant that has more than around $2,400 of monthly income, then you would have to establish a qualified income trust or a Miller trust in order to get that income to be under the threshold of the $2,400. The community spouse or the spouse that is not applying for benefits will be entitled to unlimited monthly income. So there's not any cap on the amount of income that the community spouse is entitled to. If we shift to the asset limitations for a married couple, the institutionalized spouse usually can keep around $2,000 or less of resources. This number does vary depending on the state, but the most common number is going to be 2,000. And then the community spouse will be entitled to around 1/2 of the couple's resources up to $130,380. And that is going to vary slightly depending on the state, which we'll talk more about later in today's program. Other resources that are going to be non-countable for Medicaid qualification purposes include the home, an automobile, household goods and personal property, irrevocable funeral trust, or a prepaid burial. And then some states do consider IRAs to be non-countable resources as well. If your Medicaid clients do have excess resources, we're generally going to develop a Medicaid eligibility plan, which includes increasing or improving non-countable assets. So making improvements to the couple's home, purchasing a new car, things of that nature. So taking assets that would be countable and converting them into a non-countable source by making improvements that maybe the couple have thought about doing for a while, making improvements to the kitchen or a bathroom or things of that nature. Also, we can purchase prepaid burial policies or funeral plans. We can pay off credit cards, mortgages, or other debt. And then once we look at all of these other ways to spend down a client in order to qualify for Medicaid, if there are additional assets that are left over, we can consider purchasing a Medicaid compliant annuity that would comply with the Deficit Reduction Act of 2005. If we look at Medicaid planning with annuities, Medicaid annuity is always going to be a single premium immediate annuity. It's never going to be a tax deferred annuity. A single premium immediate annuity is a way to convert countable assets into an irrevocable income stream. A tax deferred annuity, on the other hand, is always going to be considered an asset for Medicaid qualification purposes because there is cash value or there's a surrender value that can be accessed in order to pay for care, whereas a SPIA or a single premium immediate annuity is strictly an income stream because there is no cash value associated to a SPIA once you convert it into income. As a result of the Deficit Reduction Act of 2005, immediate annuities must meet very strict requirements. So there's hundreds of insurance companies out there that offer immediate annuities, but there's less than 10 companies that offer a Medicaid compliant contract. When we talk about a Medicaid compliant contract, we're really talking about an immediate annuity that has the following language on the policy. So in order for the contract to be considered Medicaid compliant, it must be irrevocable, non-assignable, must make equal payments, be actuarially sound, and then name the state Medicaid agency as the death beneficiary on the contract. There are some exceptions to the state being named as a beneficiary, but in most cases, the state will have to be listed as the remainder beneficiary on the contract. When we say that the policy must be irrevocable, it must be irrevocable in all aspects. So it cannot just be the income stream that is irrevocable, like what would happen on an immediate, just a plain immediate annuity. The income stream would be irrevocable, but on a Medicaid compliant contract, all aspects of the policy must be irrevocable. So we can't change the owner of the annuity, the payee, the duration of the payments, the payment amounts, or the beneficiary. So no aspect of the annuity policy may be changed on an irrevocable contract. Also, the annuity must be non-assignable, meaning that we cannot assign the payments to a company like J.G. Wentworth or Peachtree, companies that will purchase immediate annuities on the secondary market. Also, the annuity must make equal payments. Prior to the Deficit Reduction Act of 2005, we could use a balloon style payment that would make very small payments initially and then a large payment at the end. Now the payments must be equal as far as equal payments over the duration of the contract. Also, the annuity must be actuarially sound. The actuarially sound requirement means that the annuity can be structured for a time frame that is less than the person's life expectancy, but we cannot structure the annuity for a longer duration than what the annuitant's Medicaid life expectancy is. And then finally, in most cases, the state must be named as a remainder death beneficiary in most cases. The different types of assets that can be used to purchase a Medicaid compliant annuity, it's really any type of liquid asset that can be converted into a Medicaid compliant policy. If your client has money in checking, savings, CDs, brokerage accounts, stocks, bonds, any of those accounts are pretty easy to liquidate and use those monies to purchase a Medicaid compliant contract. Also, if your clients have whole life insurance policies or non-qualified annuities, in those cases, we can use a 1035 exchange to transfer those types of accounts, either whole life insurance or non-qualified annuities, into a Medicaid compliant contract. And then finally, if your client has IRA accounts or retirement accounts that are considered countable for Medicaid qualification purposes, we can use those types of accounts to purchase an IRA Medicaid compliant annuity to convert those accounts into a countable asset and convert that into a non-countable income stream. If we look at a married couple scenario, the most common situation when we encounter a married couple is that one spouse is in a nursing home or is in need of care, and the other spouse is remaining at home or in the community. The goals when we're planning for a married couple include obtaining immediate Medicaid eligibility without any kind of penalty period or private pay period for the institutionalized spouse by converting their excess resources into an income stream. And then we also want to provide the community spouse with peace of mind as well as sufficient income and resources so that he or she is able to maintain their lifestyle in the community. We're going to consider a married couple situation with Roger and Nancy. And Roger is an 85-year-old who has dementia and is currently residing in a nursing home. His monthly income is $2,000 per month. He has a nursing home bill of $10,000 per month. And Nancy is his wife, who is 80 years old. She is considered the community spouse because she's still remaining in their home, and she has monthly income of $1,000 per month. The couple has a home, a car, and $300,000 of non-IRA bank accounts. So most of their money is sitting in checking, savings, or in an investment account, but it's all after-tax dollars that this couple has. If the couple does nothing at all, with them spending $10,000 per month on Roger's care, they're going to exhaust their $300,000 of their entire life savings within a 30-month time frame, so a 2.5-year time frame, and the full $300,000 is going to be spent down by paying for Roger's care. When Roger passes away, Nancy will be left with nominal assets and nominal monthly income. So instead, we're going to look at qualifying Roger for Medicaid. And the first step is going to be to calculate the spend down amount. Roger, as the Medicaid applicant, is going to be able to keep his personal property, a prepaid funeral policy, and $2,000 of the $300,000 in cash assets. Nancy, as the well spouse or the community spouse, is able to keep the family home, a car, personal property, a prepaid funeral policy, and then $130,380 of the $300,000 in cash assets. So when we add up the $2,000 that Roger can keep plus the $130,380 that Nancy can keep, and subtract that from the $300,000 of total assets, we determined that their spend down amount is $167,620. So this is the amount of assets that the couple has that is not allowing them to qualify for Medicaid. So we need to spend that money down in a way that Medicaid will allow for. Why is Nancy able to keep the maximum of $130,380? I mentioned earlier that the couple would be able to keep 1/2 of the resources up to $130,000. If you reside in a minimum maximum community spouse resource allowance state, then you're going to be looking at dividing the couple's resources as of the snapshot date in half. And if we do that, in this case, the couple has $300,000. If you divide that in half, we get $150,000. So half of their resources at $150 is greater than the maximum of $130,380. So Nancy is going to be capped at the maximum of $130,380. Some states are considered to be minimum maximum states, and you can check our website to figure out what your state does. If you see on our website that your state has a minimum of the $26,776 and the maximum of $130,380, then you know that you're in a minimum maximum state, and you would have to divide the resources in half to determine if they get to keep 1/2 or if they're going to be able to keep the $130,380. And then there are some states that simply are considered maximum states that you get to keep the full $130,380 without having to divide the resources in half. So this next slide here will show you what each state does. The states that are in blue, which is most of the country, are considered to be minimum maximum states. So you will have to do that exercise of dividing the resources in half and determine if that amount is greater than or less than the $130,000. Otherwise, if you are in a state that is in orange, you kind of have an easier situation of just having a maximum amount without having to divide the resources in half. Once we determine the spend down amount of $167,620, we're able to immediately eliminate the spend down amount by purchasing a Medicaid compliant annuity for Nancy. Nancy would be the annuity owner, the annuitant, and the payee. And if we look at structuring the annuity over Nancy's Medicaid life expectancy of 116 months, we see that the monthly payout on the contract is going to be $1,450 per month. By multiplying the annuity term of 116 months by the monthly payout, we determine that the total payout on the annuity contract is going to be $168,200, and that is going to be basically the single premium plus a small amount of interest that the insurance company would be paying back to Nancy over the life of the annuity contract. We determined that Nancy's Medicaid life expectancy is 116 months by looking at her age of 80 and looking at the life expectancy table based on her age of 80. And we determined that her life expectancy is 9.68 years or 116.16 months. And since annuities can only be structured for a whole number of months, we looked at 116 months as the annuity term in this case. This is going to be the longest time frame that we could purchase the annuity for, but we can shorten the term if we choose to do that. We often get the question of why is Nancy or the community spouse the spouse that would be purchasing the annuity? And it really comes down to the idea that the community spouse is able to have unlimited monthly income, without having to contribute their income towards the cost of care of the institutionalized person. There are 2 states currently, Illinois and New York, that will take a portion of the community spouse's income and say that a portion of that needs to be contributed to the Medicaid applicant's cost of care. And so in basically all states other than the 2, Illinois and New York, we can create unlimited monthly income for the community spouse without having to pay any of their income towards the Medicaid applicant's cost of care. If we were to put the annuity in the name of the Medicaid applicant or the institutionalized person, and that income does not get shifted over to the community spouse under the monthly maintenance needs allowance calculation, then the income that we created by way of the annuity is just going to go towards the institutionalized spouse's cost of care without there being any kind of transfer penalty between spouses for transferring bank accounts or any assets that are jointly owned. In most cases, it is going to make sense to have the community spouse be the purchaser of the annuity instead of the Medicaid applicant. The main reason is, again, going to be because if we create that income in the name of the Medicaid applicant, it's likely just going to go towards the cost of care if we're not able to shift that income over under the MIMNA. So here's our example of the income calculations. First, we have to calculate Nancy's monthly income. She has Social Security of $1,000 per month. And when we add in her MCA income at $1,450, her total income each month is $2,450. If we assume that Nancy's monthly maintenance needs allowance each month is around $3,260 per month, we see that Nancy does not have enough of her own income to meet her monthly maintenance needs allowance amount. And so she has a shortfall of $809 per month. Because she does not have enough of her own monthly income to meet her MIMNA, then she's actually going to receive some of Roger's monthly income. If you recall, Roger had monthly income of $2,000 per month. If we then subtract out the shifting that he would be paying over to Nancy at $809 per month, and then also consider his personal needs allowance of $50 each month for haircuts or personal items that Medicaid doesn't cover, then we're able to determine that Roger's copay to the facility is going to be $1,140 each month. The economic results of the annuity being structured over 116 months is that Roger and Nancy were expected to pay $10,000 each month for his care. We were able to reduce his copay to $1,140 per month. So the couple experienced a monthly savings of $88.60 each month by qualifying Roger for Medicaid and only having to contribute the $1,140 a month towards his care. The advantages of the annuity plan is that we were able to obtain immediate Medicaid eligibility for Roger without any kind of penalty period or private pay period. We were able to create sufficient monthly income for Nancy through the use of the annuity and the shifting of income over from Roger to Nancy, and she was able to continue living in the community. The potential disadvantages would be that the state has to be the primary death beneficiary on the annuity. And so if Nancy were to predecease the term of the 116-month annuity, the state Medicaid agency is going to be entitled to recover against the annuity contract for the amount that they provided in Medicaid benefits on Roger's behalf. And so we could look at shortening the annuity term from 116 months to a lesser time frame in order to reduce the likelihood that the state would be able to recover against the annuity. If we assume that Roger, the Medicaid applicant, passes away 6 months after the annuity is purchased, many people will ask what happens to the Medicaid compliant annuity in this situation, and the answer is nothing at all. Roger was not the annuity owner or the annuitant on the policy. This was an annuity that was owned by Nancy. Nancy was the annuity owner and the annuitant, or the measuring life of the annuity. So Roger passing away is not going to have any impact on the annuity contract because he was not the annuity owner or the annuitant. If we're concerned about the Medicaid applicant's health and the community spouse is not interested in receiving payments from the annuity for the next 9 years, then we may want to shorten the annuity term in order for Nancy to receive the payments quicker. We don't like to be in a situation where the Medicaid applicant passes shortly after we purchase the annuity and then the community spouse is left to receive a very nominal monthly payment for the next 9 years, and she's concerned about how she's going to make ends meet. So that's something that we take into consideration when determining the time frame to have the annuity pay back. With the Medicaid applicant passing away, not having any direct impact on the annuity policy, we want to be sure that the community spouse is going to have enough income to live on if the Medicaid applicant does pass away shortly after purchasing the contract. If we instead assume that Nancy, the community spouse, passes away 6 months after the 116-month annuity is purchased, then what happens to the annuity? Well, since Nancy is going to be the annuity owner and the annuitant, her passing away will have a direct impact on the annuity policy. So we would notify the insurance company that Nancy has passed away if she does pass away in that 116-month time frame. The state Medicaid agency is likely going to be the primary beneficiary of the contract, and the state would have a right to recover 6 months worth of payment from the annuity. This will be at the Medicaid reimbursement rate. And so there may be a big difference between what the Medicaid reimbursement rate is at the facility that your client is at versus what the private pay rate is. That's something that will make a big difference in the amount of savings that the family will receive if there is a big difference in the private pay versus the Medicaid reimbursement rate. The remaining Medicaid compliant annuity amount of around $123,000 would be paid to the couple's children if they are listed as the contingent or secondary beneficiaries, and the children would have a right to either continue the monthly payments as they were scheduled over the 110 months that are remaining, or they could elect a lump sum of cash at a discounted rate or a cash commutation amount that they would be entitled to. That would be an option that the children would have once Nancy passes away. How did we determine the $123,000 amount that the children would be entitled to? We would first look at the Medicaid annuity amount that was used to fund the original contract at $167,620. We would subtract 6 months worth of payments that were received. It was $1,450 a month that was received from the annuity. So if you multiply that by 6, we're getting $8,700. And then we would also subtract out the amount that the state would have a right to recover against the annuity. And this is, again, based on the reimbursement rate at the facility. In this case, it was around $35,000 that the state was able to recover. So the amount that would go to the intended beneficiaries is going to be $123,760. This amount is going to be greater than if the couple would have just continued to privately pay for Rogers Care at $10,000 per month for 6 months. That would have been $60,000 that the couple would have spent on Rogers Care. So by doing the annuity and obtaining the Medicaid reimbursement rate, we were able to save around $23,000 by doing the annuity versus just privately paying for Rogers Care. A common misconception about the annuity and naming the state as a beneficiary is that the state is entitled to the entire amount that is remaining in the annuity contract. The state would only be entitled to the amount that they had provided in Medicaid benefits on behalf of the Medicaid applicant. And so it's not just a situation where whatever is remaining in the contract gets paid over to the state. It would be a limited amount based on how long the state actually provided benefits to the Medicaid applicant. In summary, the impact of the Medicaid compliant annuity when each spouse passes away. We talked about the institutionalized spouse passing does not have a direct impact on the annuity policy. It's just going to continue paying out as scheduled, even if the Medicaid applicant passes. But when the community spouse passes, the state would be entitled to their payment, and then the secondary or contingent beneficiaries would be paid whatever is left in the contract at that time. If we consider a fact change where, as a result of Nancy's older age and poor health, she's worried that she's not going to survive the 116-month annuity time frame, and which would result in the state being able to recover. So Nancy wishes to reduce the annuity term down to 24 months. Roger's monthly income is going to remain at $2,000 from Social Security, even if we shorten the annuity term down to a 2-year time frame. But by shortening the term of the annuity, we're accelerating how quickly Nancy receives the payments back. And so instead of Nancy having monthly income from the annuity at $1,450, we increased that income amount up to $7,000 per month. When we add the annuity income of $7,000 plus her Social Security, she has total income of $8,000 per month, which is now exceeding her monthly maintenance needs allowance. So she is no longer entitled to any of Roger's income because we have created more income than what she needs under the monthly maintenance needs allowance. Roger's copay amount to the nursing home is going to increase from $1,140 per month up to $1,950. The income calculations here with the 2-year annuity, we would again be adding Nancy's Social Security income at $1,000 plus the annuity income at $7,000 per month to determine that her total income is $8,000. Because her total income of $8,000 is exceeding her monthly maintenance needs allowance, we see that she no longer has a monthly income shortfall. So Roger's copay to the nursing home is going to equal all of his income of $2,000 less his $50 personal needs allowance that he would be able to use for haircuts or other personal items that he would need. And his copay is now going to be $1,950 instead of $11.40 each month. If we consider another fact change where, again, Nancy is concerned that she is not going to live for the 116-month time frame, Nancy wishes to further reduce the annuity term to a 2-month time frame. With a 2-month annuity, we would be increasing the annuity payments from $7,000 per month up to $83,815 per month. With Nancy's Social Security income of $1,000, we see that her total income of $84,815 is greater than her MIMNA at $32.59 each month. So she is not going to receive any of Roger's monthly income, and Roger's monthly copay to the facility is going to remain at $19.50. This again is just showing that the total income of $84,815 is going to be greater than the MIMNA, so there isn't any shortfall on a monthly basis, and Roger's copay is going to remain at $19.50. While a 2-month annuity is technically going to be acceptable under the Medicaid rules as far as being actuarially sound, we would caution you that payments of $83,815 could be viewed as abusive and definitely raise some red flags with the Medicaid office. So when determining the term of the annuity, there's a lot of different factors that we would take into consideration. But as a general guideline, you may want to consider that if the community spouse were to require care and you look at how much 1 month in a facility would cost and use that as your general guideline for how much income you would create under the annuity, then that's a pretty safe way to go as far as not creating too much monthly income. So if you're in a state that the cost of care is $10,000 per month or $15,000 per month, then you would be able to accelerate the annuity payments and create that amount of income under the annuity contract. But creating $80,000+ of monthly income over a 2-month time frame is likely going to raise some red flags as to why your client needs to obtain Medicaid benefits if they're receiving that kind of monthly income. So in summary, shortening the annuity term is going to increase the annuity payment on a monthly basis. It also will decrease the likelihood that you're going to get any kind of shifting of income from the institutionalized person over to the community spouse under the MIMNA calculation. Every time that you have a situation that the community spouse's income is greater than the MIMNA, then you're giving up the shifting of income from the Medicaid applicant to the community spouse. Also, by shortening the annuity term, we are decreasing the likelihood that the state would have a right to recover against the annuity. The quicker the community spouse receives the payments back, the less likely that the beneficiary designation is going to come into play. If we look at a situation where we have an annuity that's going to pay for a 2-year time frame and the community spouse lives for another 5 years, then the state having a right to recover is not going to come into play in that situation because the community spouse did not pass away during the time frame that the annuity was set up for or that it was scheduled to pay for. The different factors to consider when determining the best length for a community spouse annuity, we want to consider the health of both spouses. So like we talked about, if the institutionalized spouse is anticipated to pass away fairly quickly, then we want to be aware that the community spouse should have a healthy amount of income so that we're not leaving them with an annuity that's going to pay out for way too long and not create enough monthly income for them. We also want to consider the health of the community spouse if we're trying to structure the annuity so that they receive all of the payments back from the contract prior to passing away. Then we would want to consider that when we set up the annuity contract. Also, we need to consider how much money we are spending down when determining the time frame of the annuity. Obviously, a $500,000 annuity is different than a $50,000 annuity as far as the time frame that we choose to pay that money back. Also, we're going to consider the couple's monthly income. If we're trying to shift income under the monthly maintenance needs allowance, then we need to consider how much money is being created under the annuity contract. Also, we're going to consider how quickly the community spouse needs the money back from the annuity. If the community spouse wants to do their own planning for long-term care, or they need that money for making home improvements or doing something that they would need to accelerate the payments, then that's something that we would consider as well. And then finally, we would consider the type of funds that the annuity is being purchased with. If we're using after-tax dollars or money that's coming from a checking or a savings account versus money that is considered to be pre-tax dollars or retirement assets. IRAs and tax qualified plans, not all states consider the community spouse's IRA to be a countable resource. It may already be protected without any action being required. But if you are in a state that considers the community spouse's retirement plan to be countable, then we can help to convert the tax qualified account or the retirement account into an IRA Medicaid compliant annuity. This is a map that is showing the states that consider the community spouses IRAs to be countable versus states that consider the community spouses IRA to be exempt. All of the states that are in blue are states that consider the community spouses IRA to be a countable resource versus, excuse me, the states that are in orange are states that consider the community spouses IRA to be a non-countable or a protected asset. In the states that are in orange, you would not be required to do a Medicaid compliant annuity for the IRA accounts because they're already an exempt resource in these states. If your clients reside in a state that was in blue on the previous screen and you have a situation where the community spouse owns an IRA or a tax qualified plan, we can use those accounts to purchase an IRA Medicaid compliant annuity, and we can fund the annuity with either a trustee to trustee transfer or a 60-day IRA rollover. The transaction of funding an IRA Medicaid compliant annuity with either a trustee to trustee transfer or a 60-day rollover is not going to be a taxable event, but as the annuity makes payments, then those payments are going to be considered taxable income. So choosing a very short-term annuity in a situation where we're using IRA dollars or retirement assets to fund the annuity is not going to really benefit the client much from a tax planning standpoint. So we would consider a longer term annuity in most cases when we have clients that have IRAs. The timing or the steps to secure Medicaid eligibility through the use of an annuity. First, we have one spouse that would enter a facility or the snapshot date would be established. Then we would consider how much needs to be spent down. If there is extra money that needs to be spent down after home improvements or funerals are purchased, then we would purchase a Medicaid compliant annuity with the spend down amount. And after the annuity is purchased, then the Medicaid application is completed and submitted. Why Medicaid compliant annuities are not purchased as a pre-planning tool or before one spouse enters a facility. Medicaid compliant annuities, like we talked about, are going to be completely irrevocable and non-assignable. So they lack flexibility once the contract is purchased. And also a second spend down amount will be, or a second spend down will be required if we purchase the annuity prior to one spouse going into a facility. We're not able to maximize the community spouse resource allowance if we do the annuity prior to the snapshot date or prior to one spouse going into a facility. So we definitely want to use an annuity in a crisis planning situation where we already have one spouse that has entered a facility and not purchase the annuity prior to the spouse going into a facility. And I will take any questions that people have. It does look like we have a couple of questions. Sorry, I have something in my throat. Todd's asking if he needs to finish for me. Okay, somebody is asking, using the 24-month annuity scenario, what if Roger passes away and wife lives for 24 months and now needs nursing home care? If we have a situation, so if the wife has a 24-month annuity and she needs nursing home care during that time frame, then that income from the annuity is going to go towards her cost of care if she needed to qualify for Medicaid. So that too is another thing to take into consideration when you are structuring the annuity time frame, is if the community spouse is anticipated to need care in the near future, then we would likely want to structure the annuity so that the payments are made back to the community spouse in a time frame that they can receive the money back and then do Medicaid planning for the community spouse without having to contribute all of that income towards the community spouse's cost of care. We also have a question here. What if both spouses have been admitted to the nursing home? Do you coordinate the penalty period, a gift transfer, and annuities for both? Yes. In the situation where we have both spouses in a facility at the same time, we would make a gift which would incur an equal penalty period for each spouse, and then we would purchase two separate annuities for each spouse. Usually we look at the cost of care of each spouse and the income of each spouse. So for example, if each of them are spending $10,000 a month on their care and the husband has $3,000 a month of income and the wife only has $1,000 of monthly income, then we're going to want the wife's annuity to be for a greater amount than the husband because she has a greater income need during that penalty period. If you have questions about how to structure that, you can feel free to email or call me with questions on that. But yes, it would be an annuity purchased for each spouse, and then they would split the penalty period if you have a situation where both spouses are institutionalized. And then there's another question here. If you have a situation where an institutionalized spouse has qualified money, in the situation where institutionalized spouse has qualified money that is considered to be countable. There's different techniques that we can take into consideration to spend down the institutionalized spouse's qualified funds. We can use name on the check rule, or we could liquidate the institutionalized spouse's qualified money and shift the after-tax dollars to the community spouse to purchase an annuity. So in that situation, it's really going to depend on what the couple's income is and what their life expectancies are when we determine whether it makes sense to use a strategy like name on the check rule or liquidate the accounts and then transfer the money over to the community spouse. We have a question here about explain name on the check rule. Name on the check rule allows for the institutionalized person, if you are in a state that considers the institutionalized person's IRA to be a countable asset, then you can convert the retirement account into an income stream by using an IRA Medicaid compliant annuity, and you can name the community spouse as the payee on the contract, so that instead of that income going towards the institutionalized spouse's cost of care, you would be protecting that income by naming the community spouse as the payee. Not all states will allow the name on the check rule. So if you have questions about whether your state does allow name on the check rule, feel free to just shoot me an email or give me a call to ask about how your state handles that. We have another comment here about huge caution with the 2-month annuity. Yes, I did. I put the 2-month annuity in there just as an example that technically you can do very short-term annuities for a community spouse, but we don't recommend creating that kind of monthly income when you have a community spouse case, because it, again, is likely to raise red flags with the Medicaid office. If we have an IRA Medicaid compliant annuity, is this used in a pre-planning or a crisis planning scenario? It would be still a crisis planning scenario, because the only reason to use an IRA Medicaid compliant annuity would be to convert what Medicaid would consider to be a countable asset into an income stream and to meet the Medicaid qualification guidelines from an asset standpoint. So it is still considered to be a crisis planning tool that would be used, because it's still going to be irrevocable and non-assignable when it comes to like lack of flexibility. Okay, I think that I answered everybody's questions here. If you do have questions for me as far as how your state handles certain things, again, feel free to call or email. Next month's webinar is going to be on how to, or the different factors to take into consideration when you are planning for a married couple and structuring the annuity time frame. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I'm sorry my throat started to give out at the end, but if you have any questions for me, let me know, and take care, everybody. Have a great week.